everybody. Welcome to the MAASCAST. We're here to bring you the best quarantine content and talk swimming, life, the Olympics, and how we and everybody is affected by the coronavirus. In today's podcast, we're going to interview a couple people, including D1 college swimmers and national team members, all right? So first off, I'm going to introduce our co-host for today. He was a Division I All-American for the University of Louisville, now is a head coach for Byron Center Aquatics, and fitter and faster clinician, Sam Hoekstra. How's it going, Sam?
Hey, Kev, what's going on, man?
So Sam just had a baby, and how is it going with the coronavirus? And now you have to stay inside. Is it nice or is it a little bittersweet?
To be honest, it's pretty nice. Unfortunately, we weren't able to, we were towards the end of our high school boys season, so that was a bit of a bummer not being able to finish that season, as well as I know a lot of you are in that same position. So that was a bummer, but honestly, having a 3-month-old child, it's fun to be home and around them and just seeing her grow day to day, and just spending a ton of time with her and my wife. It's actually been pretty nice, and we are in a pretty unique position. I'm on a salary, so my pay fortunately doesn't stop. So we don't have the stress of trying to make money and all that and being out of work. So we can just kind of really enjoy just being home and spending time with family. And we've been in isolation for about a little over 2 weeks now. We've only left the house a couple of times. We really appreciate all of our grocery shoppers who deliver our groceries. And it's just been kind of a nice little vacation.
Thanks for the feedback. And I'm going to introduce our two guests for the first segment right now. We got first a freshman at Alabama, 3-time SEC A finalist, and would have been a 2-time NCAA D1 All-American, Derek Maas. Woo! All right.
What's up?
What's up, Derek? And next up, we got a senior at Alabama school record holder, and 2-time Olympic trials qualifier, Kyle Maas. There you go. All right. How's it feel to be on the MAASCAST for the first time?
This is really special. This is a first, but I can tell you it's going to be the first of many. This is something
it's
special.
It's a dream come true, really.
Yeah.
Dream come true. Oh yeah.
Just to be in the presence of Maas TV and all these really amazing athletes, it's really something special.
Oh yeah, for sure. So this question is for Derek. You were headed to go to NCAAs for your freshman year in 2 events, and a week before they announced you got canceled. How did that feel? Were you expecting that, or were you very surprised?
To be honest, the day before, I was completely not expecting it. I thought it would go as usual. But by the time I dove in, when NCAAs got canceled, I was almost expecting to come out and be told it was canceled. And then once I got dressed, our team was already having a meeting, and I got the notification that it was canceled, which was pretty disappointing. But I think for me, it wasn't as bad because I at least got to swim at SECs and get some good times in, and then I have 3 more opportunities to swim at NCAAs. But like for other guys, especially the seniors and high school seniors that won't ever get to swim again, it's super disappointing. I feel really bad for them.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about a potential extra meet? I know a couple of the Texas guys are petitioning to be able to swim NCs next year. I think obviously an entire season of eligibility is unreasonable, but what about one meet or just NCAAs for those guys?
I think that'd be interesting. As a whole, it really, we would be able to bring back Zane, so that'd be big. But other schools would probably be able to get seniors, like way more seniors. And so I think it would benefit them more than us. But I don't know, it'd be unprecedented, but I think they might be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It'd be really hard to.
The whole season thing for the extra year probably won't happen, but like you said, with the extra meet, I think that would be an option. Or they could even do something where maybe they can swim, but they can't score points at these meets, or they could be exhibition swimmers, or there's a lot of options, but right now it's not looking great for the winter sport athletes in terms of another year. But I think there's definitely, especially with the trials being postponed, or most likely being postponed, I think there's going to be a lot of senior athletes who are going to want to be at least training. So if they can look into something for them, I think that would definitely get a lot of support behind it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I've heard something thrown around about maybe a senior meet or something like that.
And then speaking of training, how is your training today compared to like at Alabama and what you guys did there? I know we have a pool here and we're training. We can lift a little bit, but our pool's only 12 yards. So what do you do here, and what do you do there, and what can't you do there?
So right now, I'm actually lifting a lot more than I would be lifting at Alabama. And I just started lifting a couple days ago, or swimming a couple days ago, and have just kind of been getting into it. But it's definitely harder to do like long threshold work in a 12-meter pool. And yeah, I think it's good for me just to continue to lift and build muscle though, especially for breaststroke. So I think it might end up being beneficial in the long run.
Is that exactly how big your pool is, 12 meters?
It's like a little over 13 yards. It's 40 feet. So yeah, it is pretty short, but we do have cords that we can swim against, and they're at a pretty good tension where you can go pretty hard and make it all the way with the cord, or you can swim at a pretty constant speed in the middle of the pool, kind of get some threshold work in. So we've been doing that. Our pool just opened a few days ago. So once we kind of figure out a schedule, maybe get some practices written, or like, I think we'll be able to get into a habit of using it more often and kind of making a training plan, you could say.
How long have your workouts been so far?
I mean, I've been in the pool only like twice, and they've been around an hour. But we've been lifting, and maybe every other day or so, and I've been doing different forms of cardio, whether that's biking or running or climbing a dune nearby, or whatever we can do.
Speaking of cardio, Kyle, how I heard that you did a little bike ride the other day.
Yeah, so I went for a short little bike. I was cooped up inside, wanted to get out and about, so I went for a bike ride. I decided to do 112 miles because that was the Ironman distance, and I thought it'd be a cool challenge and cool thing to say I did. So I went out there, I did it. Took me good part of the day. Ended up with almost 7 hours, but I think it was worth it. Definitely pushed myself. Definitely it's a good way to challenge yourself and really kind of stick to a goal and work for it, now that we don't really have that structured form of goal setting and goal attaining with swimming and meets.
Is that something you see yourself doing in the future? Ironmans, triathlons, or anything like that?
I think definitely, yeah. With Ironman, the hard part is the run. I would really have to build up a lot to do that full 26 miles, especially after the bike. But I think triathlons would definitely be a cool way to kind of stay competitive after my swimming career is done. and keep me working out, keep me in shape. But yeah, right now my swim and my bike are pretty solid, but I still got to work on my run. I think that'll come with some training though, because my running muscles and joints aren't really used to that right now. We'll see though.
Oh yeah. So what meets are you guys looking to train for, prepare for, and taper for?
So I'm hoping there'll be some taper meets that we can still go to in August. So I'm training right now and hoping to taper for those. But if I can't, then obviously the SEC, NCAA double next year, and then the Olympic trials that summer, and maybe a meet after that, kind of a double taper like SECs, NCAAs.
Oh yeah. Kyle, what about you? Because I know you have a gap year next year for med school. So what are you planning on doing the next year and a half?
Yeah, so I'm still planning on finishing out my career at Olympic trials. So whenever that may be, I'm planning on going all in for that, trying to put up some fast times. So whether that means training with the team or doing stuff on my own until we get things figured out, we'll see. But yeah, I'm still looking at Olympic trials right now. We'll see when that happens though.
Mm-hmm. So, or Sam, you want to go first?
No.
Oh, okay. So Derek, for SECs in the 100 breaststroke, you won a 51, and that's blazing fast. So, but before that, you were telling our dad, you were saying you were going to go that all along. How'd you know you were going to go that time?
So yeah, I told you and Dad I think I wanted to split a 24-4, 27-4. Ended up splitting 24-2, 27-5.
This is the 100 breaststroke, in case you didn't mention. 100
Yeah.
breast.
But yeah, just based off my practice times, I'm pretty analytical and can kind of usually know where I'm at just based off how fast I'm going in practice. And my coach was giving me some pretty fast times, and I know he has a little bit of a fast wash, but I just compare those times to earlier in the season. So
When did that start, Derek? What do you mean by analytical? How do you train? How do you what do you think about when you're training? How do you get yourself to go that time and then but really prepare for that? What's your mindset in practice? What are you thinking about? And how did you predict something like that?
So the focus for me in practice is always like when we're doing something fast. I don't really worry about going fast if we're just doing like a medium slow set. But when we are going fast, I like to make sure I see like what times I'm going and how they compare to earlier in the season, just based on where I'm at. And if I've been lifting, make sure to not worry too much if my in-season times like in dual meets are a little bit slow, which at some points they were. Like at the Auburn dual meet, we all swam terrible. But I just felt like once we got some rest, I would improve a lot, and that's what happened for our whole team.
Something that, as a coach, something that I really try to keep the focus on is obviously splits, paying attention, to the clock and making sure that you actually know how fast you're going, because some days you feel really fast and that might not be the case when you look at the clock, and some days you don't feel great and you look at that clock and you can surprise yourself sometimes. So I'm always trying to make sure that my swimmers are really paying attention to that clock. Also, another thing that I've worked with both you and Kevin, I didn't get too much time with Kyle, but stroke count, and I think especially for breaststroke is something that's extremely important. Do you pay attention to that at all?
Yeah, so basically anytime we would do 25s fast in practice, I would go 7 strokes. And I sometimes will try to decrease the stroke count, but I think when you do that, you don't really get the same work in. And at the end of the year, I did 5 strokes, 7 strokes, 7 strokes, 8 strokes. And I knew kind of where it would be at after each stroke. So I didn't have to worry too much about timing the walls. And the wall timing was pretty good.
And then Kyle, do you ever work on stroke count like that and other strokes like fly, backstroke?
Yeah, I do, but definitely not as much as with breaststroke, because I think breaststroke is the most. It's the stroke where timing it up, each stroke per 25 matters the most, because you can end up either really short or having to take a really long stroke. The other strokes, you can kind of gauge it off where you are and make slight adjustments to flip. But I think definitely in practice, thinking about your tempo and kind of training at where you want to be in the race, kind of getting used to working at that tempo you're going to be using. And certain strokes you might want to practice swimming fast without the legs as much for, say, a 400 IM, or practice hitting pace times without doing 5 or 6 underwaters if you know you're not going to be doing that off every wall in a 4IM. But yeah, I think definitely training and getting used to practicing how you know you're going to be swimming it in the race is really important, and that's something I try to focus on a lot.
What about you, Kevin? Do you think about that stuff in practice?
So these guys focus on that a lot, and in our pool, actually, I need to for backstroke and butterfly and all these strokes. I have mastered the stroke count in our pool, but it's funny, in 25-yard pools, I don't really as much. I just kind of swim it, and then I see the wall coming. I don't really think about the stroker. I just know when it's coming because of the black line at the bottom. That's what I focus on.
Gotcha. I have I guess I have a question for the two Alabama guys. You know, Kyle, you're kind of wrapping up your career. You've gone through a lot of changes at Alabama. Derek, you're just kind of, you just finished your first season there. You both come from, well, all of you come from, really great program at West Ottawa, which I feel like has a pretty good mix of, sprint work, aerobic work, power. We have, I think they had 7 power racks there. You guys are pretty much covering all your bases. What, in your opinion, is the biggest difference between your training at West Ottawa and the training at Alabama?
Update for you, Sam. We actually have 6 now.
Oh. That's not the first time that happened.
Yeah, I'd say coming from West Ottawa, it's definitely as far as high schools go, I'd say it's definitely one of the more elite programs for sure. And so you're doing a lot more work than you might expect from a high school team. But coming into college, the biggest difference was the consistency of long practices and the total hours we're doing in a week. So where West Ottawa we're doing 2 doubles a week, Alabama we're doing 3 doubles a week, and they're all 2-hour practices, and we're lifting 3 to 4 times a week on top of that, plus dryland a few times a week. And just the overall hours in the pool, it's not like one particular practice is going to be insanely way harder than anything I've ever done. It's just everything added up ends up being a lot more, and your body takes some time to adapt, but once you do, you can really get a lot out of it, or at least I did.
So just overall volume.
Just like having the time to swim twice a day and take naps in between and fully recover from each one. You're really able to kind of focus on it a bit more compared to high school, where you're waking up early, you're going to practice, you're going to school the whole day, going to afternoon practice, lifting, getting home, and then by the time you're home, it's pretty late at night, and you got to eat and go to bed. But in college, you can kind of be a little bit more rested and a little bit more focused for each practice, and I think that helps over time get more out of it. You're not really getting as bogged down and tired, especially if you have time to take naps during the day, which I think that's kind of where I found the most benefit. Also, putting on muscle, eating a lot more, dining hall 3 times a day. That was a big thing for me coming in from high school.
I think the biggest difference for me from senior year of high school to freshman year at Alabama was definitely just the lifting. For high school, we did like 2 30-minute lifts a week versus 3 at Alabama, and they were like full hour lifts. And personally, I definitely worked more intensely at Alabama in the weight room, and I think that made a big difference, especially in the breaststroke and sprint breaststroke.
Nice. How much weight have you put on, Derek?
Right now, I'm around 200. I got up to 205, and this was from last year at high school state. I was 180, but then by SECs, on like that 3-week taper, I was 190, so I dropped 15 pounds, but then I gained it back pretty quickly, and then I'm working to keep adding muscle.
What do you think resulted in that drop, the drop in weight?
Well, yeah, so that normally happens for me in taper, so I think just the rest genetically a little bit makes me lose a little bit of weight, but I also wasn't putting pressure on myself to gain weight, so I wasn't constantly thinking about eating more, and so I definitely ended up eating less than I had been, which was a lot, and so just a decrease in calories. But I couldn't find a way to explain the 15 pounds. I don't know, that seemed like a lot for 3 weeks.
If it was for me on taper, before taper, I think the lowest I got was 171, and then the day before, we didn't have the state meet because it got canceled. But the day before the state meet, I checked my weight and I was 184, so I gained 13 pounds, and I think it might have been because the creatine increases, saturates your muscles, and I think and then it and just eating the same, working out less.
I don't know, for me at least.
Yeah, so I think that's a big factor for sure. And Kyle, I'm sure you can attest to this. But yeah, I mean, the idea of taper is that your volume steadily drops, right? You get more rest. You're doing less yardage. You're probably backing off the weights a little bit as far as volume goes. And for me, usually when I tapered, my appetite would drop as well, because I'm just not spending as much energy. I'm not burning as many calories. But I have heard, and it sounds like, Kevin, this is kind of what happened to you, is that either the appetite drops or you're just kind of stuck in that habit of just eating pretty much as you can. But then the volume drops and you're maintaining your calorie intake and you put on the weight. So I think that's an important message to all the swimmers out there who are preparing for a taper meet or tapering, is to just really pay attention. And that's something I think you can really you hear a lot of elite swimmers talk about it, is, man, I wish I had paid attention to my nutrition a lot earlier in my career, because once a swimmer goes pro, it's their job, right? They're thinking about every tiny little way that they can get better, and they always, almost 100% of the time, they always say, nutrition has been one of the biggest factors in my progress. And so, yeah, I would encourage everybody. I mean, there are I think a lot of college swimmers, based on all the work that they're doing, can probably get away with just eating, as much as they can. And a lot of teams, a lot of universities have dining halls that you can't really you can control what you eat, but your options are pretty limited. Some places have better dining halls than other, but you really need to figure out what works best for you. I'm sure Derek, he's obviously got really all three of you boys. You have great genetics. You can probably get away with just eating everything, but there's a lot of swimmers out there who probably can't. They have to pay attention a little bit more to what they're eating. They still need to eat a lot, but paying attention to their calorie output and intake, and just putting more focus on that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big factor. It's very different from swimmer to swimmer as far as what they need to eat and how much they need to eat to maintain the best weight for them to swim fast. For me, I know like I can go from weighing 190 all the way up to like 205, and 205 probably isn't the best weight if I'm swimming the 4IM or long course 2IM, but it's still lean. It's just a lot of muscle, but I know that's not what I need. It makes me a little heavier in the water. So really trying to think about that, and even though I could be healthy and still weigh that much, it's probably not as good. So I'm trying to kind of limit the calories a little bit, stay in my like optimal range. After a few years, you kind of learn what that is. And I think for everyone, they can kind of get a feel for when they feel the best in the water and what they need to do to stay there. So especially on taper, not going crazy with the food, listening to your body, trying to stay where you need to be, not looking at, well, he's eating this, he's putting on this weight, just kind of doing what you need to do, and doing it for yourself.
What kind of stuff did you guys look for when you were in the dining hall? Like Derek, I think Kyle actually said it. You were in there 3 times a day. What kind of stuff were you looking for?
So,
yeah, you can go.
So in season, when I was trying to gain weight, I would look for just to try to eat as much as I can and get as many calories as I can while still maintaining a pretty general mix of, proteins, fats, sometimes vegetables and fruits. And then, but towards taper, I definitely ate a little bit healthier overall, but it was still a similar mix. I probably just threw in some more fruit and more lean proteins than before.
Yeah, for me, when I'm in season, I don't really have to. I'm pretty much just eating as much as I can. So for breakfast, I'll always go with the omelet bar. I get a scrambled eggs, and then I'll always get some type of potatoes. Eat that with a little sriracha, and then depending on how hungry I am, I'll get some cereal, get some yogurt. For lunch and dinner, somewhat similar. I'll try to get some protein, some carbs, some vegetables, maybe two rounds of that, and then at the end, maybe get some cereal or get some frozen yogurt. They have that. It's pretty good. And drinking a lot of water, staying hydrated. And
do you guys have sweet tooths? Like, do you like your sweets, or do you just try to stay away from that?
Sweet tooths?
A sweet tooth.
Yeah, I'd say I do have a little bit of a sweet tooth, but during the season, I probably could do with a little less, just because I can eat whatever. I can pretty much eat what I want without putting on weight with all the training we're doing, but obviously it's probably a little better to not do that, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
What about you, Kevin? Do you have a sweet tooth?
I do have a sweet tooth, yes. I do have a love for ice cream. We have Ben & Jerry's Half Baked, which is very good. Derek can solve that Rubik's Cube while I'm talking, but I'll eat for dinner. I'll eat my salmon. I'll eat my rice, but make sure to save room for that ice cream.
Kevin
dessert stomach.
Kevin likes to say there's two stomachs, a regular one and a dessert stomach. So
Exactly right.
no matter how full you are, there's always room.
Oh yeah.
Nice. While we are on the topic of nutrition, do you guys use any supplements?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Very good
Yeah.
question.
If we could go to our kitchen cabinet right now, we'd find a lot of supplements like I don't know, multiple, like beet juice, pills. I didn't even know that was a thing before this. Kyle, you want to add on to that? I know you.
Yeah, so I
he knows more
kind
about
of
this.
I get into phases where I'll take it and then I'll kind of forget and I'll stop. But just different stuff like beet juice, tart cherry juice, kind of more natural. Some of that stuff. Never really took creatine. Never really took beta alanine, but more natural like beet juice, tart cherry juice, some
So
rhodiola, rosea, ashwagandha, just different natural things help you relax, dilate the blood vessels, help circulate blood flow. Hopefully, it's supposed to be good for endurance, but so we have those. I don't always take them, but if I wanted to get the full effect, I probably should, but right now I'm not really on anything at all.
Yeah, so for me, I'll take those, and then beta alanine. But then on taper, I'll take creatine also. I think that if I were to take creatine all the time, I might start making less creatine. So I like to take it only on taper, get that extra boost for when I dive in and feel the power. But then the other, like rhodiola and ashwagandha, I'll take those. And then the beta, I think, helps a little bit with like 1 to 7 minute.
And speaking of creatine, I know Cesar Cielo, I think that's his name. Yeah, the world record holder of the 1500, or just is it both? 1500? Yeah, 1500. He admitted he took creatine year round. I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
So maybe it helped him, maybe it didn't, but yeah.
I think age, as far as creatine goes, I do think age plays a factor definitely, because from what I understand, right, your body already produces creatine, and as I think when you're kind of in that teenager adolescent phase, your body's actually kind of ramping up the production of creatine, and from what I understand, it's possible to like Derek said, like kind of almost slow down the production of creatine if you're getting excess creatine from an outside source. So yeah, I definitely think it's something that you have to, none of us are obviously professionals on supplements or doctors or anything, so we can't prescribe anything, but I think definitely talking to a professional about supplements, I think it's definitely something that's extremely important, especially with the standard American diet and the way it is now, and the food that we're getting is not the most nutrient dense food, especially if you're eating a lot of processed stuff. And so we're missing out on a lot of those nutrients that our body needs, especially training at such a high level. And so, looking into natural supplements like Derek and Kyle have both mentioned, I think is a great way to start. Also looking into, your protein intake, I think is really important as well. And looking into the source of that protein, because not all protein is created equal. So it's definitely something I think that's worth looking into, consulting a professional, talking to, if anybody like at a high level in swimming, and what they've done in the past. And the other thing to remember is that everyone is different. And so what works for, these guys or myself, may not work for you. So figuring that out and putting a little effort into it would probably go a long way.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things with supplements is you might not actually notice a difference, but if you take it and you are in the mindset that it's going to help you and you're going to have a great practice, and you get in a routine of that going into practice with a good mindset, I'm going to swim fast, I'm going to have a great practice because I took this, it might end up helping you just mentally, even though it might not be really giving you a noticeable physical impact. But I think if you get into a routine that you're taking it and you're getting these good workouts in, you're going to be getting better, whether it's because of the supplement or not. So as long as you're going into practice, like going into it thinking that you're going to get something out of it, then you might end up just getting an effect, whether it's a placebo or an effect of the supplement.
Right. Talking about that mental side of things, how do you guys, Derek, you mentioned like you're just training more intensely than you did in high school, in the weight room and in the pool, and maybe I assumed that you also meant in the pool, but how do you get in that frame of mind every single day, to just attack every practice and be intense and just get there? How do you get there mentally? Because I think that is something that really separates the good swimmers from the great swimmers, is that they're able to make every single practice or almost every single practice really meaningful and important, and just attack every practice the same way no matter what day it is.
Yeah, so if I had guys there going fast in the fast sets, I think it's easy to get motivated to try and beat them. But some of the hard parts were like on training trip, I was swimming with a group of 6 other girls and then me. And it was a little harder to stay motivated to keep going fast, especially when the practices were pretty grueling. We went like 4 doubles and 10 practices total. But I think my focus is just always on the end goal. It's not whether I'm feeling good on the training trip or necessarily going fast, but as long as I'm getting the work in and know that I'm pushing myself as hard as I can and doing the sets right, then I feel very satisfied with the workouts.
I think satisfaction is a very important key, because just this morning, I'm not saying I'm the best swimmer in the world, but just this morning, I was doing a pretty grueling kick set with drag socks, and I had 10 rounds of the 50s with drag socks. So, and after the third 50, I was like, no, I'm done with this. I took off my socks, and then I thought to myself, like, what am I gonna think at the end of this practice? Am I gonna think it was worth it? So, I think that's the mental attitude that we need.
Did you finish all 10?
I finished.
Wow. With or without the socks?
With.
Okay.
I was pretty satisfied.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite sayings is you gotta swim slow to swim fast. So basically, like mid-season, you're gonna be.
Where'd you learn that?
It's all
from,
about
Kyle.
It's all about effort. I think I heard a coach say it sometime. No, but you gotta focus on the effort mid-season, especially. You gotta be training hard. You gotta be beating yourself up, and that's gonna result in you're gonna be swimming sometimes. Some practices you're gonna be pretty tired. You're gonna be swimming slow, but you gotta keep that effort up, because come the end of the season, your body's gonna be adapted. It's gonna be getting a little bit better each week, and it's gonna be ready to go even faster than before. Because if you're just kind of staying at the same level, you're never really pushing yourself. You're not going to be actually improving. So I think focus on the effort and trust that what you're doing now will pay off later. Is kind of the big thing to keep in mind at practice.
Yeah, so getting on to another topic. So when you guys are swimming, most of the time you have swimmers your speed swimming next to you. How do you guys like do they process through your brain? Like does that impact your swimming and your stroke, or do you just tune them out?
No, I always kind of look at where and know where everyone's at, especially the guys in our group. Like when I was training with Michael Burris, we had a lot of great breaststroke sets together. And then I really like when Liam Bell comes in our group. I had like probably 15 or so practices with him, mostly second semester. And it was great to do breaststroke sets with him because I know he was the fastest high scorer in the nation last year. So if I'm going as fast as him, or sometimes beating him, rarely, then I'm in a good spot.
And then mainly practice too, but I was kind of talking about like races, like racing.
Oh.
When you're in an event, in a swimming event, do you focus on other swimmers or not?
Yeah, I kind of try to do my own race, and I can use the other swimmers as motivation and like kind of as a way to keep myself swimming fast and help me get the extra boost, like if I want to get my hand in the wall first. But at the end of the day, like I'm swimming my race, I'm in my lane, and I got to do what I can do, and whatever they do is up to them.
And
So
yeah. Speaking of motivation for Kyle, he was in the 200 breast at SECs. He had the 100 breaststroke champion swimming right next to him. And tell us how you swam that.
Yeah, so going into that race, I was in the first heat, coming in with a no time. I haven't swam a 200 breast at all, short course or long course, and it had been 2 full years. So I was going into that race, not really sure what to expect, but gonna go in as swim as fast as I can. And I knew I had Etai right next to me, the 100 breaststroke champion from a day earlier. So he was obviously ahead of the 100, but coming home second half, I knew I would have the aerobic base to pass him up, and that's what I did. But first 50, you can't let him being ahead of you change how you swim it. You gotta stay relaxed, do your thing. And I mean, a lot of people, they might see someone ahead and kind of start spinning, but you gotta stay in your lane, swim your own race, and use that to help push you at the end of the race.
Yeah. Derek, is there any instances like that you were focusing on other swimmers that you like knew you had to beat them, or like you wanted to beat them so bad that you had to look at them in a sense?
No, I don't necessarily focus on where I'm at, but I'm aware of it. Like in breaststroke, normally I take it out a little slower than most people. I'm not one of those guys that'll just spin on the first 50 of 100. But I like to know if they're like super far ahead of me, then maybe I should pick it up a little bit. And if they're really far behind me, I at least consider if I'm going out too fast, but it doesn't necessarily change what I'm doing. I base it more on how I feel than where everyone else is at.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you, if you look, or if you notice where they are, when does that happen? Because I've coaching a lot of younger kids, swimming breaststroke or it's usually breaststroke. They're looking at the top of their stroke. They're looking over to the lane next to them. Where do you usually see where other people are?
So most of the time it's off of the turn because I get a whole glance at the field and looking one way on the first length and the second length is the other way. And then just in my periphery, you can kind of tell where people are at. I don't ever take like a full glance at them, or at least I hope I don't. But just like coming off the wall when I'm going in that turn and I can see them in my periphery.
Yeah, so for me, it's basically the IM. It's pretty much the turns and freestyle is the only time I'm seeing swimmers next to me. And the freestyle, looking over and seeing them is it can be good, it can be bad, because you see someone way ahead, you're going to be getting down on yourself like, oh, I'm not swimming very fast. But if you see someone behind, you're like, oh, I'm doing great. But you got to make sure you stay in your own lane and kind of swim your own race.
Derek, you mentioned looking over at somebody. I know butterfly stroke, I don't know if this is like, it's a lot of people do it, where I'm thinking of Chad Leclos 2012 when he was racing Phelps in the 2 fly.
Chad looks all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a stroke. That's a stroke, what I'm saying. He does that to look at them, see what he's doing, see if he has to swim faster, and I think it was beneficial for him in that race. But yeah.
I mean, I think if he can swim that without it affecting his stroke, without it altering some other part of his stroke, then that's fine. But for most people, looking over is probably going to either get in their head, kind of make them think about stuff too much, or it's going to affect their stroke and kind of slow them down a little bit in that way. But if it does work for him, then that's great, but doesn't mean everybody else has to do it.
I think it works for him and it pushes him. So, it's like sometimes he can fall apart at the end of the race, but certain races like in 2012, 200 fly, it seemed to work. You know, there's no saying that if he didn't look to the side, he wouldn't have gone a little bit faster. Like, we don't know, but he did win the race, so.
Yeah.
It's true.
That's right.
What else you got for us, Kevin?
So,
I'm gonna like this next question, I think.
Well, I didn't even know what I was gonna say, but what came to my head when you asked that, Kyle, was tech suits. So explain tech suits and what you wear, and then how much you get from Alabama, how much you can get, and yeah, because I know for high school swimmers we have to pay for it. Some people they can afford it, some people they can't, and it's just a tough thing. Tech suits, they're very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, definitely tech suits are a big change when you come to college and you're getting them for free, depending on where you go. But at Alabama, it was nice getting all these tech suits for free. My first 2 years, we were sponsored by Finnis at Alabama, so we would get those. We got one at SECs, and then you got another for NCAAs. And my junior and senior year, we were sponsored by Tier, and that was the same thing. You'd get one at SECs, one at NCAAs. And then this year, we were Tier again, but we kind of upped it a little bit, and we got one for our midseason meet. We got one for SECs. We got one for the last chance meet. And then you would have also gotten one for NCAAs. And they also had a Mizuno rep come out because we're looking into switching, but we'll see. And they had people trying on suits.
Oh, you just put them on blast right there. You better be careful what you're saying.
Yeah, no, but definitely I like.
Hopefully, no one from Tier is listening to this.
I'm a big fan of Mizuno suits. Not that other suits are bad, but wearing them for the first time this summer, it's. Let's see, Kevin will grab them right now, but
yeah.
I think.
So.
Yeah,
Mizuno is not the sponsor, but this is the brand new tech
Can I
suit.
go get some fives?
If you want.
Yeah.
Well, this
is the three.
This is the three. This is what Derek wore this for a couple races last year. This was the brand new 4 that I bought cheap on eBay. That I was gonna wear for state meet, but I'll probably wear it for a race this summer if there is a summer, or next year for the taper meet, because I just wanted to I want to save it because yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I like the Mizuno the best. Just the way it brings your hips up, and the way it feels when I'm swimming, the way I can keep my body in line and compress the legs.
Yeah, so I got the
5 is
Mizuno
definitely the stylish. I think the best looking suit by Mizuno, but by far, every other Mizuno suit is the best suit on the market, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think just the way it lifts your legs, and in breaststroke, there's almost no restriction, especially for the MR type. Like the MR versus the sprint, I prefer the MR for breaststroke, and probably for other strokes too, just because like there's no restriction. Sometimes when I'm wearing the sprint one, like on backstroke, it'll restrict my kick a little bit.
I'd say for me, the MR, the MR I would prefer for every race 100 and over. The 50, almost every stroke besides breaststroke, I would prefer the sprint version.
Kevin,
Because, well, yeah.
Kevin, you should do a suit review for K-Maas.
Yeah.
I should.
Yeah.
I should be like the swimsuit or the swimsuit guy.
Yeah.
That guy.
Oh, actually,
Yeah.
this could be a whole video.
That's good.
Hey, swimming suit manufacturers, if you're watching this video,
Hey,
we'd love to
Mizuno's
do
doing it right.
we'd love to do a swimsuit review. Send some suits our way, and we'll be happy to give you some good advertising.
Kyle is now legally out of college, so he can get them for free without getting in trouble.
Yep.
I cannot receive them; they will go to him.
I can receive them too, yeah.
Sam Hoekster can receive them as well. But yeah.
Of course.
I think just the way it really lifts up your hips, especially for underwater and breaststroke, keeps your hips up in breaststroke and down underwater. It evens out the up and down motion, because the down motion when you're on your stomach is so much stronger. So that's why backstroke underwaters are a little bit faster, because they're a little bit balanced out by gravity. But the Mizuno kind of accentuates that balance in it. And ideally it would make your kick completely balanced, but it doesn't completely do that.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, while we're on it, underwater dolphin kicking and how important it's becoming. And, what do you guys do at Alabama specifically, or really any, if you guys train for a different club, what do you guys do to really work on that and to improve your underwater dolphin kick?
I'm gonna go first just to speak on that. So Caleb Dressel, I'm sure you all have seen his underwaters. They're outstanding. Like his legs move so much. The body undulation is incredible. I think a lot of swimmers, they try to do that, but sometimes they can't. I know I haven't seen Kyle's as much, but Derek's underwaters are very much like Dressel's, and yeah. What's your guys' stance on that?
What about yours, Kevin? Are yours? Have you been working on yours? Are you trying?
I've been working on them. I think when Sam was the coach, I had Sam coach me last summer, not this school year. I think when Sam was my coach, my underwaters were probably the best they've ever been, but they kind of dropped off a little bit after that. But I've still been working on them every day in practice. I think my technique has gotten a lot better. It's so hard. Any of you swimmers watching this can tell this. It's so hard to do huge underwaters every day in practice without constantly doing it without stopping. Because once you stop and you go back to it, you're not going to be able to do the big waters again in the main sets.
The big waters.
So what are you thinking about specifically when you are working on your dolphin kick?
For me, it's the knee bend. Like my junior year, the underwaters were a huge weakness for me, and just looking at the video, the main difference was that my knees almost didn't bend at all, so my underwaters were tiny, and I thought it was like just based on undulation, but then once I started, and this was based on what Sam told me, bending my knees more, immediately, it was like that, I felt the power increase, and it didn't necessarily make me faster immediately, but after training with it, that my senior year became my strength. After my junior year, it was a huge weakness. And I dropped like 4 seconds into who I am.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna speak on that a little bit and steal Derek's story. His junior year summer going into senior year, he was training with Sam Hoekstra, and it was pretty much like a snap of the finger. He wanted to make his underwaters better, and he worked on it every day. And then you had something with the knee, because
I got tendonitis,
yeah.
and I thought it was going to be a huge deal and a recurring problem, but after I recovered from it, which only took like about a week and a half, then I slowly built back up into doing bigger and bigger underwaters, and I didn't really get it again.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just to work your way up to the highest point, so then you don't go all the way there and then
Get injured.
Like injured tendonitis it's bad, but it isn't the worst thing. Much worse things could have happened, so it's a good thing that didn't. Kyle, what's your stance on underwaters?
Yeah, I mean, they're big, especially yards. It's really important to work on them every day in practice, off every wall, do a couple. I think whatever race you're doing, you can do at least one or two off every wall. And certain events, you're going to want to do a lot more. But as long as if you're maintaining that speed off the wall, and you're transitioning well into the stroke, then it's a lot better than doing none. And if you can, on top of that, add in a few extra underwater dolphin kicks to maintain that speed even longer, then I think that's what you should be doing. And I think that's what you see a lot of these, especially younger kids, doing more and more of, and college kids, but is taking their underwaters to 15 meters off every wall in the hundreds. And that's why you're seeing so many kids go so fast, I think, because they're really making full use of underwaters in practice and at the meets.
What do you guys remember? What were some of your favorite sets for underwater specifically that you would do, or would you do any?
Yeah, we would do some. I think we didn't do as many with purely fast underwaters, but we would do some sets that were like 825s on 25 underwater. That was pretty tough, and it would build up from like 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. So in total, that's 20, and they were all on 25 seconds, which was hard. So I think that helped with the underwater endurance. But for underwater power, I liked past summer when we would do just blast 25s, and it would be on more rest and we wouldn't do quite as many, but really just burning the legs helps for that underwater speed.
Some of the underwater sets I remember from back in the day were 10 25s all the way underwater on a minute, as fast as you can go. That one's a good one. And then I also liked 20 25s on the 45, where you go all out max underwater to 15 and then easy the rest of the way. Those are a good way to really focus on underwaters as fast as you can and getting enough rest and recovery to be able to do that. Because sometimes if you're in the middle of a set, you're not going to be able to kick at the same intensity that you would be in a race. And so you might not be getting as much out of it. But when you're doing sets that are focused just on underwaters, you can really work on that and focus on getting that high intensity practicing.
I think my favorite for high school, our underwater set, we did 20 25s on the 40 every fourth all out to 15. So we would do the 4th, the 8th, the 12th, and 16th, 20th.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my favorite. And then the people that weren't backstrokers, butterflyers, people that didn't really need to work on their underwaters or didn't want to, they would do them freestyle or personal stroke. I would do half and half, which like some of the days I would do personal stroke, which is freestyle, and then some of the other days I would do underwaters.
You should just do all of them underwaters. You get enough freestyle.
Yeah.
What would you guys ever ever do them with resistance, either on the towers or the racks, or with a weight belt, or with like drag socks or anything like that?
Yeah, so I remember one day we only did a few of them, but it was total 225s underwater with fins and a cord, and that was super hard because like just to make it underwater with a cord is a lot harder than swimming above water for some reason. So I did like 25 kicks with full resistance, so red cord, and that really burned the legs.
Yeah.
What?
I completely forgot. What was the question again? I had an answer.
So underwaters with cords or
Oh
drag
yeah. So this morning I woke up and went out there. I'm gonna talk about my practice again. With our cords, we have the cords in our 12 meter pool, and I used our resistance cord, and it really, I recommend trying it for everyone out there. It's so weird, like the feeling. It's nothing like you think it would be easy. You think it would just slow you down, but it messes up your whole technique. So I think it's a good way. I think it's a good way to try it, to keep working on it. For me, at least.
So you're saying you'd recommend it, but it does mess up the technique.
Well, if your technique is really bad, you probably want it to be messed up.
That's a good point. That is a very good point.
And I think it really forces you to think about that consistent propelling of water. We see a lot of people get a very one direction kick, and if you're doing it against the cord, it's really gonna highlight where your weaknesses are, and it's gonna kind of force you to be a more even kicker and kind of be efficient, but also be pretty powerful, which I think is definitely good.
Yeah.
I heard Liv in the background.
Yeah, Liv's making some noise, I think.
You think she's gonna be a good swimmer? She's showing any potential?
If she wants to be, I think she's got all the resources she needs to be a pretty great swimmer.
And the jeans.
And the jeans.
Yeah.
The jean suits. Speaking of jean suits, me and Derek have a pair of jean suits. Pretty cool.
You would think it looks pretty silly, but it actually looks like jeans. Like you would think they're tight jean shorts for a woman. When Derek was wearing them.
Do you guys get those from a specific company or?
Yeah. What was it?
I think it was from Australia. I forget what brand it was though. They were jammers.
Hey, so maybe we should. I'm thinking about starting a square leg. Or maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't put this out there. I better keep this one on the DL.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody stealing my ideas. But we'll have to talk about this later.
Yeah.
We'll tell you what he's starting once he's starting how to trademark on it.
Yeah. Once you can buy it.
Do you guys want to see Liv?
Yeah.
Hold on, I'll bring her on.
Yeah.
Alright. So just for you guys in the comments, leave a comment in the comment section how much you like our setup.
Here she is, guys. Here's the next.
Oh my god.
Here's the future Olympic champion.
The future high school destroyer.
Dang.
Let's go.
What's her height looking like, percentage-wise?
She's she was born pretty small, but she went. Oh, there she is. She went from the 0 percentile to, I think at 3 months she's already up to like the 10th percentile or something like that.
Oh,
okay.
So she's growing pretty fast. She's got pretty
getting there.
big hands and feet too. So
Yeah.
That's cool. She wants some milk.
I think she might want some milk. What do you think? You think so? Who are those guys? You haven't met them yet. All this quarantine stuff keeping us in the house. All right, I'm gonna give her back to Mom.
All right. All right. Should we wrap it up here? Yeah.
I think I'm gonna. Yeah, I need to take off here and work, do some daddy duty stuff.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty good length. There's definitely more.
That was good.
I think we need to make this like a regular occurrence if this works out.
Yeah,
actually. And
I
then,
think that was some good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time
Thanks for
on the
tuning in.
MAASCAST.
Hey, comment below if there's any topics you want us to talk about or if there's anything you want us to bring up. Just let us know. Leave a like, subscribe, make sure to turn on notifications. Have a great week and share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time.
Let's do it. See you guys.